Okay. We're live.
So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to Foxbit Eventing Live on YouTube. And I'm joined back by popular demand by Jackie Potts.
Hi.
Well, we had such a good time the other day.
Great.
And we got cut short, and we are going to keep it really tight today because, of course, we're all going to be out on the streets applauding our fantastic NHS staff at 8 o'clock. So half an hour.
Yeah.
And we must just remind you that we have been social isolating together. That's why we can sit in close proximity, because throughout this lockdown period, we've been one family unit here on the yard. So Jackie and I can sit close together tonight. So we've got half an hour, and we thought we'd look back on all sorts of different things. Of course, you'll remember that Jackie Potts has been with us for 27 seasons. She's done 8 European Championships, 4 Olympic Games, 5 World Equestrian Games, 17 badmintons. So there is no one with a greater font of knowledge than our very own Jackie Potts, or Grands as we call her here in Foxbit Equestrian. And welcome to everyone from all around the world, because we had the most phenomenal response to our last Q&A with Jackie. So we thought we ought to give you the opportunity to get those questions in again. So Grant, how have you been since we last chatted?
Yeah, really good. I mean, exciting news now that in England we're having the restrictions lifted gradually, so we can start to think about eventing.
I mean, whether we get eventing, we don't know, do we? But we do now know that we can do lessons, which is great. So people will start coming here to Wood Lane Stables. We've got social distancing policy in place now, and we will be allowing people to come here for lessons with William here in the outdoor school, and he is also going off for training, which is exciting.
Yeah, no, really good. You know, it just seems to think that things are moving along a little bit now, and good to get the horses thinking a little bit more about a competition. It'll be very exciting.
For people, though, who perhaps haven't had the opportunity to get to their horses because of this awful situation where they haven't been allowed to go to the yards, I mean, you've got to feel for them, haven't you?
I mean, we've been so lucky, the fact that we live on the yard and we've been with the horses, because they are great therapy in themselves, aren't they?
They have. They've been incredible therapy, haven't they? So for any of you who haven't been able to get to your horses, you know, our heart goes out to you. But I'm hoping with these slight lift in restrictions that maybe you have been able to get onto the yard and see your horses. And we thought that we would perhaps give you a few lockdown checklists to, as we come out of lockdown, what you should be looking for and thinking about in terms of your horses, because it's going to be really easy to forget stuff, and perhaps your horses have had a very quiet time over the last 7 weeks and you haven't been able to do what you want, or perhaps you just eased off their work. So Jackie and I thought we'd chat with you about that, but please do start sending your questions in. We love to have your questions, and we've got all sorts coming in. We've got some lovely people being very excited, Jackie, about seeing you. And Matthew Rippon saying hi, lots of people saying good evening, but no questions yet. So let's have a chat about the first sort of things that you would advise people to start thinking about now we're coming out of lockdown.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I love a list, so I've already already compiled one. You've got to think about what, like you say, some people haven't been able to go and see their horses. So what your horse has been doing, how fit he or she, and what you're aiming to do as well. It'd be very easy to be lulled into that false sense of security.
It's the start of your program, so take it right back to as if those horses had a winter break.
I think, you know, maybe aim for an event that you think might be running or you might be able to go to. I think if any of your horses have been doing like a normal school and maybe a jump once a week, now that we've been able to start doing that, you're probably 3 or 4 weeks off being able to go around an event, and just an easy one.
What is your program. So say we've had a horse that's been in the field for 6 weeks. Right, we get it in from the field. What would be where would you start?
Well, we're very lucky that we actually use the walker for a week and let them go on the walker. Without shoes often as well. And it just hardens their feet off and gets them used to, getting on the normal exercise. We then would ideally hack for 4 weeks, but at the moment we've just been hacking around the fields. So it's a whole new concept of how you get the horse fit in that respect. And I think you've got to have a little bit of leeway either way. And then you do 2 weeks of trotting. And at the end of the 2 weeks trotting, introduce some canter. And again, 2 weeks cantering before you'd have a bit of a jump.
I suppose it's exactly the same as if you guys have been shut up in your flat, and a lot of you are massive experts, and we've already got people from all around the world checking in. So Flat Junk, great to hear from you. Thank you so much for logging in from Kentucky. We were gutted not to go out to Kentucky, and you've flown out there so many. How many times have you been?
I think about 9 or 10.
9 or 10 trips, and we love it there. We've been lucky enough to have 3 wins in Kentucky. So great to hear from you, and wishing you well, Flat Junk. And Kathleen Henderson, hello from New Zealand. What time would it be? It must be quite early in the morning.
In the middle of the day, 9, wasn't it? I was going to say middle of the day. It must be 9.
It's really early for you. So, Kathleen, great to hear from you. And I hope that all of you all around the world are safe in this awful lockdown period. And we were talking about, if you start to bring these horses back into work, it's a bit like if all of us have been in shutdown. I've been kind of trying to exercise, but I haven't been in the Joe Wicks program.
No,
lots of people have been in. And William, we're in William's office actually at the moment. We've snuck in because I don't know any of you who joined us last time. You may remember that we had a bit of interruption.
Background noise.
Yeah. That's how I put it. Background noise, where William just came in and started just kind of crashing around in our kitchen, not really respecting the fact we were trying to do a telly program. So we've come to the office this time, and his exercise bike's behind us, and he's been really active on that and really trying to maintain that fitness.
It's very good. Because that's the thing. That's the thing as well, that you, as a rider, fit yourself, because it's so easy to have an unfit horse and a tired rider, and the two aren't a great combination.
Not a great combination. No. And also, if you want to compare yourself to your horse, if you came straight out of lockdown and went for a 5k, you're not going to feel great, and that's the same with your horses.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think another important thing is it's very easy to think, I'll start feeding him up a bit now, he'll need more energy. Feed after they've got up in their exercise, because again, you've got the problems of overfeeding, them being too fresh, tying up.
Your policy on feeding is something that always really surprises me, and it's because you're a great feeder, but you're a very cautious feeder, aren't you?
Yeah.
And Spillers is a company that we work with and have worked with throughout the time that I've known you. Just talk us through a little bit the philosophy of your feeding, because I've never known horses look so good on so little, and I don't mean that in the wrong way.
Yeah, no, I think really important is your forage as well. So if you've got good quality forage, then you can supplement it with a good quality feed, which again, you don't need so much of if it's good quality.
What is your hay feeding regime?
Most of the horses are on 4 times a day. That's when they're in stable all the time, and they'd have 2 lots of hay and 2 lots of haylage. Nice to give them a bit of a mix.
But our haylage would be very low in juice, wouldn't it? Because you can get haylage that's quite spicy, quite high in protein content, and that can be quite powerful for the horses. One thing I think is interesting with you as well is you like to feed their hay before you give them their hard feed in the morning, don't you?
Yeah, I think.
Why is that?
Well, personally, I think it's really good for if they've got a tendency to have any ulcers, and it's good to just line their stomach a little bit before they get the hard feed, because in some respects, it's a very unnatural thing to do, is to feed a horse hard feed.
So you'd come on the yard, go straight round and hay round before you do anything else.
Yeah, and it's also a good time to check them as well. Just see how they are. Are they okay this morning? And especially feeling their legs, before they go out to the stable. It's very easy on a bigger yard to maybe miss something. So it's a good, nice, quiet time. Just have a little feel down.
You love the system, don't you?
I love the system.
I love our country, loves the system. So we've done the hay, we talked about the hay, but the feeding, I'll come back to the feeding, because Spillers is very much the core feed that we feed. And then you are always researching other things to bring in and over the top. And Equestro is our supplement supplier, and they have a huge range. But again, you're always researching other things, aren't you? So what would be your baseline feed regime with Spillers?
I mean, say we had a new horse come in, or you're starting feeding the horse that's been off and wants a little bit to, keep him going. And we like to feed a bit of chaff as well, chaff or some of this Fuller's Alfalfa Pro.
Can I just be really rude? We've got our first question.
Oh, right.
Grace, but I'm not sure you're going to want to answer this.
Oh, no.
Grace says, how old are you?
Oh, gosh.
Grace, that's so rude. You don't ask a lady how old she is.
No, I don't mind, because you're as old as you are, you can't do anything about it.
And you've been here for such a long time.
I'm 57.
Isn't she incredible?
So the good answer to that is, oh, you don't look that.
Yeah. And luckily we can't hear you, Grace, so that's all right, isn't it? So back to our feeding.
Yeah.
In the 57 years of experience that you've had. Tell us, that baseline is the layoff cube.
Yeah. I love Spillers because you know what you're getting. It's always the same.
Mm-hmm.
We basically feed 3 types of cubes: layoff, slow response, and then power cubes for the slugs, really. But that's not often.
And it's quite interesting, for people who perhaps aren't training the higher end horses, the change in feed and the effect it can have on your horse and its behavior is really, really serious. I mean, it can really change it to the point where William and you would never feed power cubes on, say, a Thursday night before a dressage test, would you?
No, because I know it's supposed to be 2 weeks, before something kicks in, but I think even just a couple of feeds of it, some horses can change like that.
So your baseline is your layoff, and then you'd go up to the slow release.
Yeah.
How much are you feeding?
We tend to feed by scoop. We don't actually weigh it out, because we feed by looking at the horse and how they are, how they feel, how they're going, how they're behaving.
People might say that's a bit old-fashioned, but using your eye, isn't it, and your feel is so important.
It's great to have scientific backup, but I think this is what you need to develop, the horseman's eye.
Grace has asked another question. Grace, you're fantastic. Thanks, Grace, for the questions. Anyone else, do fire the questions in. Who was your first horse, Jackie?
My personal horse or horse here?
Well, I don't know. She just says, who was your first horse?
First horse here would have been Charker.
And Charker,
many years ago.
That is many years ago, and his career was amazing. He came to William having had a bit of experience, but with a bit of a reputation.
Getting to the top,
And then what happened?
Then he went on to win most of the advanced one days every year, and Burley and Gatcombe Open. Amazing, great horse.
And he was in the lead at badminton.
Yes, would have won badminton, but wasn't sound enough to jump on the Sunday.
That must have been one of the worst days ever, wasn't it?
Well, highs are better with the lows.
You're such a philosophical old thing. So the feeding side, that's interesting, because your horses here always look gleaming, and they always carry quite a lot of condition that you have a way with William of getting them fit without them really knowing it.
And I think because they have a holiday and they go out on the grass, we're very much turn-outers. They can put that little bit away, got something to turn into muscle, and that's as important as anything, that they're on good grass. And
we're very lucky, aren't we, in terms of how we get the facilities we have on site. We've got another question. Will it be easier to get the young or the older horses back to fitness? That's a really good question, actually. I'm sorry, I can't quite see your name, but it'll come up in a minute. What's your take on that with the old or the young horse?
I think if an old horse has been off completely, it's probably more difficult to get them back. But I think a more experienced horse that's just had an easier time would probably be easier than a younger horse in that respect, because they've been fit already.
And that core fitness, it takes quite a lot to lose that, doesn't it?
Especially a really competitive horse. They sort of want to keep fit, to keep going.
But that said, even if you are getting an older horse, you still need to keep that really responsible routine and keep your patience. In terms of the horse's welfare has got to come first. And you may be thinking, oh, I really want to get going. But that systematic approach will pay dividends later on in the season for sure.
And I think also what we have to think about is the ground must be like concrete at the moment. So it's really, everybody would love to go out charging along, going cross-country schooling, but is the ground too hard? You have to take that into consideration.
Vijay, thanks for that question. That was a good one. How old were you when you started riding? Grace is asking us another question. Thanks, Grace.
In depth. I was 10.
Were you?
Yeah, I was 10. I went to the local riding school with my friend because she wanted somebody to go with her, and she stopped riding and I carried on.
And did you always envisage that grooming would be your career?
Not at first, no. I think as I got older, And my sister always said to me, "You need to find a proper job." And I did work in an office for a while, and it wasn't me.
I can't imagine.
No,
that.
it wasn't me
Well,
at
actually,
all.
maybe I can. I'm not sure. You're very efficient. You like a list. But what about career grooms? Because I know that's a bit of a bugbear for you. That
Yeah.
perhaps more people aren't seeing it as a career, and it's something you've been working on with the Grooms Association and with the FBI.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important nowadays that, especially as it's got a higher competition standard, that we are looking for career grooms that are learning experience, because that's the thing with the horses as well, having that experience. And the FEI have now said that they're going to do a registration of grooms for the 4 or 5-star events, which is really good, because not only are they recognising grooms, but also grooms have then got to keep up to a standard. I think that's as important.
And what
as
will that
anything.
registration entail?
Basically like a vet or a physio. So you won't be allowed on site unless your name is down on the register.
Gosh. And will that be a cost to grooms or not?
At the moment, I don't think so. I couldn't swear to it, but I don't think so. But it's the fact that you have to be recognised.
And
I think that's a really good thing.
Really important.
Yeah.
And from your point of view, when for you did you think, yeah, this is for me, or has it just evolved?
It evolved for a certain amount of time, but I think in my 20s, I found that I was working to finance my horse side. And so it seemed ridiculous to not do the thing that you loved every day.
And there was a time when you thought about looking at going in and working with the police horses, wasn't there? There was just one little moment where you thought about it when William moved to Dorset and things were changing.
Yeah.
And you looked around a little bit, but your core passion and your knowledge always pulled you back to this top end.
I think that's the thing. If you love something, then whatever else you do is second best.
Yeah. And it was always going to be horses.
Yes, yeah.
And but the people as well, and your encouragement in terms of the younger people who come in. What's your sort of thinking behind that and supporting people here in terms of their education?
Well, I mean, it's been great fun as well. We've had some lovely people through, and I really like to see somebody blossom, not only in their knowledge, but as a person. We often say, especially with the boys, they turn up as a boy and leave as a man. Well, we hope. But it's great to see people use their initiative and also the caring of them. It's not just about riding, and also it's about getting results and teams and medals, etc. But it's also about the welfare and the care of the horse.
And talking of that, we need to get back down to our lockdown. Oh, Kathleen's just been in touch. It's 6:30 on Friday morning for her in New Zealand. So, Carl, you're up bright and early,
very keen,
getting ready before the horses go. Really good to have you with us. Just if we go back to our lockdown checklist. So we've talked about feeding.
Yeah.
We've talked about the programme to bring them back into work. What about the sort of physical practicalities of things that you mustn't forget to double check before you think you start going out to competitions?
Well, I think with the shoeing, I mean, we've actually here not had stud holes put in for the last couple of months because it's all expense and adding up. So it'd be very easy to go to an event with no stud holes in, which has happened once before. And it's not ideal, because we also have to think about what are we going to do about barriers there, etc. So important to check your shoes, especially your vaccinations. Because again, we've just let the 6 monthly ones go because at one point the vets weren't allowed to come out anyway. And are the BEF going to still want them in that 6 monthly time for the vaccination? So it'd be really good just to check through your passports, check your shoes, check probably the week before you're going to go anywhere that your lorry does start and that it's not covered in mold or mushrooms. And also your social distancing measures when you're there as well. What things do you need to take and how are you going to cope with it there?
I think that's a really good point, because if you're going to try and perform and compete within the new normal, how is that going to play out? And how is it now, from what we've heard so far, what are the measures if an event should take place? What are the measures that so far are potentially the things we're going to be dealing with?
Well, it's going to be quite an isolated competition in itself, really, for everyone. We've all got to be quite diligent that we're not riding next to somebody having a nice chat, which is, tempting because you've not seen your friends for ages. And the same for the grooms, no going off to the dressage, blah, 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 as you're going along. I know that numbers are going to be printed off the night before. Lorries are going to be parked away from each other. There's going to be certain times that you're supposed to arrive and leave. So it's going to be very different from our norm.
It's going to be really challenging for
Yeah.
riders, for grooms, but also for organisers. And we really hope that the organisers take up the challenge to put on some events, because there's a lot of people waiting to go, but they may be limited to the number of horses that they can run in a day because of the logistics of having people on site or not.
Yeah.
And so, of course, that's going to have an economic impact into whether it's viable to run these events or not. Probably the main event we're waiting to hear on in terms of our big calendar here in the UK is Burghley. Burghley has yet to officially cancel. This week we lost the Blair International Horse Trials, and I know that the family at Blair will be devastated to have given that up. It's been a long-standing real focus in Scotland, and for that end of August before we head to Burghley, heading up to Blair. We've loved it up there, haven't we?
It's sad, but it's inevitable, isn't it?
So I suppose now it's really whether those autumn events or anything can come together for the autumn event, and what's happening at the grassroots. And we've got another question that's come in. How's the team doing?
I think the team's doing really well. They've been very positive. It's actually in some ways like the same as people have said about their families. It's pulled everybody together even more, because we've all been in the same boat and we've made the best of it.
Yeah, it's been really interesting how everybody's pulled together. We've got an incredible team here. If you've seen our Meet the Team features on the YouTube channel, you'll see just the diverse and interesting people we've got here, who've got horse welfare really front and centre as their focus, as well as their own careers and ambitions. And obviously you've got your second head, Adam Short. I mean, he's great at keeping everyone's morale.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, he's always a bright spark from 3:30 in the morning till 3:30 at night.
It's quite amazing. And then, of course, Lexi Scoville, who's with us from the States. She is A, brilliant rider, and B, an incredibly focused athlete, isn't she?
Yeah. I mean, I was quite impressed the first event I went to with her. She was very self-sufficient, real planned, got on with it, but professional to the end.
And I feel desperately sorry for her, because, you know, she has come here on a sports visa because she's really trying to catch the eye of the US selectors. And I was really hoping this year that she may have made it on to one of the Nations Cup teams. She's got the most incredible horse, Sprout. And if you follow her on her social media channels, you'll see it's Sprout and Lexi's big adventure, and they really are on this big adventure. And she's left her family, her friends, and come to the other side of the world. And lockdown for her is a really big deal. What about Kazu? I mean, Kazu, you're his right hand lady, and dealing with the fact, and he talked to us about it in his Meet the Team on the YouTube channel, but how has he coped mentally with the home Olympics being postponed, and how to refocus around that?
Yeah, I mean, it must be very difficult for him, but I think they're a nation that are brought up to carry on a little bit like the stiff upper lip British, you know, to carry on regardless. And I think he's coped very well with it. He's probably loved the training he's been able to do with them.
He's incredibly focused, isn't he? And as things have opened up, that he's been training and stayed very focused with William. He's been very structured. I think he will probably head back to Japan for a month and then come back. But I've just been blown away by how, like you said, he sort of had one day where he was a bit like, and then he's just been so professional.
Yes, very accepting of the situation.
Yeah, incredible. And then we've got Belle in our team, who is with us from Wales, who's an elite modern pentathlete, was #1 in Wales, and really extraordinary. She's just got a great way about her on the horses and keeping everyone chirpy. And she's actually been training my poor kids in running, which
have they enjoyed that?
I'm not sure, it's just sort of a small touch, but anyway, it's been fantastic, and we're hugely grateful to her. And then the wonderful Alex, who's with us from South Africa. And I think it's been really tough for her, because this is a huge commitment and a big decision, hasn't it? And we've got some breaking news that will come out on the channel later on next week on an update on Alex and her, how she's coped with Corona and her thoughts moving on after that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's great. Thank you for asking. The team are doing amazingly well, and we're massively grateful to them and to the owners and to all our sponsors for staying supportive, aren't we?
Yeah.
But the horses look fantastic.
I know, that's been the sad thing about the whole situation, because I think this year they've almost looked better than they have done before. You know, they've come out of the winter so well.
And what about William? How do you feel he's coped with it?
Well, I think he's, you know, obviously he's missed the events, but he has enjoyed his time with his chickens. it's been a lot of chicken breeding.
I know, we'll give you an update on that as well,
Yeah.
because I think there's around about 30 chicks that have been hatched.
At least, yes, at least. No, but you know, I think it is hard for everybody, and especially when you want to compete. And you know, his horses were ready to go this year.
They really
Little
were.
Fire and Oratorio would just look fabulous
Mm.
and really come into their own.
Mm.
But you know, he's used his time well. He's been training with those here, you
Mhm.
know, and he's just been working on things that maybe needed improving on a little
Mm.
bit, and just taking it in his stride.
It's really interesting because when you look at those real pros like William and Pippa and Piggy, you know, they're all on a Zoom call together just the other day, and just talking about what they've been doing, and they've been really using the opportunity to take it back to grassroots, and
Yeah.
really take it back and really focus on those basics that perhaps often they don't have time because they're going from
Yeah.
event to event to
Yeah.
event, haven't they?
Yeah.
So
And you know, you're by the time you've done your schedule for the week, or you've had one school or two schools, there's not always been the time just to go, well, hold on, let's explain this again, you know, to the horse and work from that.
And has it been difficult, do you think, for him to manage the sort of the program for the horses? Because what he did.
Yeah, I mean, that's difficult in its way, but they've been ticking over, and they've had maybe a little bit more fun, you know, just not so much schooling. They've done a walk and a trot and gone for jollies. We're very lucky that we have the fields here that they can be ridden around.
Oh, Jackie, do you know what? We've got David who said, you do not look a day over 30, Jackie. What's your miracle cream?
I love you, David.
But we've got 2 minutes till we all need to be outside and clapping our fantastic NHS heroes who've been doing such an amazing job for all of us here in the UK. And we're so grateful. So grateful. So that's it from us for today. Thank you for all your questions. We've really appreciated
thanks
it.
very much.
And Jackie, as ever, incredibly insightful and brilliant. So thank you so much.
Probably loads more we could have talked about.
As ever.
Yeah.
That's it from us. Good night.
Good night.